So it did sort of start out as this like, oh, let's just do this intimate thing together that's kind of about the isolation, and it actually kind of flipped on its head and became more about like, let's go see people and be a guest in someone's house. It's a thing that I love, to be with people, and it's almost crazy to talk about it now, but it felt in that time so off limits that even kind of considering it again was so wild. So that was kind of it, wanting to like document that like togetherness.
That was today's guest, Taylor Ashton, and this is Harmony Talk, the podcast where dreamers, creators, and change makers share the stories behind their artistry, ambition, and path to success. Each conversation is brought to you by AM Skyer, proud sponsor of Harmony Talk and trusted partner to people and organizations shaping stronger communities. I'm your host, Greg Frigoletto. Summer has arrived in northeastern Pennsylvania, and that means one of the region's most unique cultural experiences is back. Harmony in the Woods opens its 6th season this summer in Hawley, bringing world-class musicians from around the globe to an intimate outdoor amphitheater nestled among the trees. This year's 23 concert lineup spans roots rock, jazz, bluegrass, folk, Americana, and global music, creating a summer-long celebration of extraordinary artists in an unforgettable natural setting. Opening weekend kicks off July 3 with Toronto's Bywater Call, whose powerhouse vocals and horn-driven Southern soul have earned international acclaim. The celebration continues July 4 with Mamma Mania, the American tribute to ABBA, bringing audiences an evening of nostalgia, sing-alongs, and timeless hits. And throughout the summer, audiences will discover remarkable artists like today's guest, singer-songwriter Taylor Ashton, who brings his intimate blend of folk, Americana, storytelling, banjo, and guitar to Harmony in the Woods on Friday, August 7. Taylor's story is every bit as fascinating as his music. Emerging from the isolation of the pandemic, he embarked on a 4,000-mile cross-country journey to create an album unlike any other. Rather than recording in a studio, Taylor and producer Jacob Bloomberg traveled across America, capturing songs in parks, forests, backyards, and unexpected places along the way. The result became Stranger to the Feeling, a record about reconnection, friendship, love, and finding your way back to the world after a period of profound isolation. Today, we'll talk about that remarkable journey, the music it inspired, the collaborations he met along the way, and what audiences can expect when he brings those songs to Harmony in the Woods this August. Taylor, welcome to Harmony Talk.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
It is absolutely our pleasure to have you, and I want to start with telling you that we're going to spend a lot of our conversation today talking about your most recent album, Stranger to the Feeling. However, because this is a podcast about dreamers and doers, we'll spend a little time just having the audience hear a little bit of your backstory. But before we even get to that, when I found out that I was going to have the opportunity to have a conversation with you, I dove deeply into Stranger to the Feeling. And I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan. And as I was listening to it, I really didn't have the opportunity to have heard anything else that you had done prior to that. But as I was listening to Stranger to the Feeling, there was an overwhelming sense I had that this guy's a romantic, right? I really thought that. Like everything about it seemed to be, kind of in line with what a romantic would be, passionate, creative, attentive, present, and then as I finished the album and thought, man, this was so good, I need to dig deeper. I literally saw that you have an album called The Romantic and Romanticized. Yep. So my hunch was pretty accurate, and it really spoke, I think, so well to what you accomplished lyrically. And we're going to talk a lot more about that when we dig into your album in just a bit. But before we do, because this is, again, a podcast about dreamers and doers, and every dreamer, has a beginning to their story, I think it would be important for our audience to know a little bit about you. You're originally from Canada. You had, I think, a pretty successful run with a band in Canada called Fish and Bird, but then you decided, because of whatever the reason was, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about that you decided to relocate. Brooklyn, New York. Tell us a little bit about that move, what inspired you to do that, and was that like ripping off a Band-Aid and just taking a dive into exploration?
Yeah. That was, I made that move when I look back on that time in my life, and I think about that time kind of arriving in New York. it's long enough ago now that I kind of look at it and I'm sort of impressed, and I can kind of like I sort of don't understand what my mindset was in a way. I kind of am like, what was that kid thinking? Because I only had, a couple friends here. But I think I was just having this sense that there was a lot of music that I was listening to and a lot of art that I was into that was being made in New York. And I just kind of had this desire to be, among that creative energy. And ironically, in the last like decade or so that I've been living here, like a lot of those people that I was listening to then, like they don't live here anymore and they've kind of moved on. And a lot of people treat New York as, or I don't say treat New York, but New York can kind of end up being sort of like an in-between place for a lot of people. They'll come and they'll feel like I hear people talking about like doing their time in New York, and they're like, oh, I did New York and now I'm ready to do the next thing. And I've got I'm married and I have a kid here now, and it seems at this point that we're kind of here for the long run, which is another big surprise. Because before moving to New York, I kind of was moving around all over the place, like, every couple of years since I moved out of my, living with my dad in Vancouver. I lived in Victoria for a couple of years, and I was living in Winnipeg for a couple of years after that. And I lived in Toronto for a couple of years. And I was kind of getting used to this rhythm of like, I would just kind of move every couple of years. So I think when I moved to New York, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to move here and then live here forever and get married and have a kid. But that's just kind of how it turned out. I kind of had there was a relationship that I'd been in with someone who's, she's a good friend of mine now, but at the time that was ending, and I was kind of torn up about that and feeling kind of unmoored. And my old band Fish and Bird, where we were sort of also kind of in that point where like we'd started playing together in our kind of late teens, early 20s, and things were kind of pulling us in different directions life wise. And I don't know, I wanted to be on the other side of the border, partially because it can be very they make it very annoying and hard for musicians in Canada to work in the States. And I just found every time my old band wanted to do any touring, it was like, there's this long commute across Canada. And anytime you want to do a tour that had any United States dates, it was just like, it was just this crazy logistical headache of having to have everything in place like months in advance. And you spend all this money and you might not even get your visa in time. And so there was part of it for me where I was just like, if I want to be living a life in music, and so much of the music that I'm enjoying is coming out of the United States, I think I just need to like rather than keep sort of, every single time I want to play in the States and single time I want to be a part of that community, it's this like, apply for a visa, apply for another visa, apply for another visa, these like tour visas. I went for this longer term artist visa and decided to just plant myself here. And, here I am. I love it.
I think it's safe to say it worked out. Oftentimes, you read about people that have some success in their life, whatever and however you want to measure success. But oftentimes there's a common theme for people that have success. And it's that at some point they were willing to take a risk. And I think for you, your passion brought you to New York, and there was a little risk involved, right? Even so much so that you were busking, right, in New York when you got there. Like, there you didn't have possibly the resources to live in New York without worry. So there was some risk involved, but it definitely worked out. Needless to say, now you have a family even, which is a whole other story. But while you were in New York, you were there during a time that wasn't only tough for New Yorkers, but was tough for everybody, right? We all went through COVID and, the isolation that occurred with COVID. And it was a tough time for everybody. But for you as an artist, as the doors were maybe starting to open up a little bit, and as a creative person, you were looking at maybe a new adventure, new music, a new album, new ideas. And you came up with an idea that I think you shared, with your manager, Jacob Bloomberg, on how to record your next album. Can you tell us a little bit about where the inspiration came from to record the album that I'm talking about, Stranger to the Feeling?
Well, yeah, I should just say Jacob's not my manager. He's a good,
Producer.
yeah, good
Producer.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, producer, and he's somebody that I've, basically since moving to the States, I've worked on any recording project I've done to this up to this time, including my next album that's not even out yet. Jacob's always been involved. Yeah, I guess this idea was, I felt like it was interesting, the sort of shift that happened with COVID. It was kind of incredible to see the way that musical communities kind of found new ways online during all that time. And, as soon as it felt safe to get outside, I don't know, I was amazed by a lot of the art that people did, where they're like, oh, I did this. This is my quarantine album. I did this all by myself, and I was in my house. And, I did some recording in my house, but I just had this feeling like I was like, I don't feel the need to document the inside time for me. Like, I spent it watching Mad Men and, getting to know my wife even better. And so it's, some people, because we got married to, fall of 2019. And then we had the sort of the most intense, most thorough kind of marriage boot camp ever
Yeah.
for the next couple of years.
Right.
And honestly, I'm grateful for that. But yeah, so when it was like, when the doors were kind of opening up, I had this, actually, to kind of go back to it, I think I'm realizing that the genesis of the idea almost was kind of like a quarantine album kind of concept, where it was like, I thought it would be fun to kind of just get together with Jacob, and like maybe it would just be the two of us, kind of like very intimate, like going, like I thought it would be funny to like go do a trip where we just went to hotel rooms. So we would go to like, hotels across, in across like Massachusetts and Jersey, and just sort of like go to weird little towns and just record things. And kind of inspired by that story about Nebraska by Bruce Springsteen, where he recorded those demos in a hotel room, which it's one of those stories that's so potent. Like I don't even think I have the details of the story straight, but it's still so inspiring. Like there's something about it that's like mythic, that I kind of wanted to respond to that in some way. But as I think what happened is, kind of as we were talking about this, we're like, well, what would be really cool is, what if instead of just the two of us and it's just me singing and him recording, it was like, we can kind of see people again. And we kind of looked at a map of the US, and we're kind of thinking like, actually, so many of our friends have moved to different places in this time. Like I think one of the interesting things about that sort of historical time period now is that it was like a lot of people took it as an opportunity to kind of rethink where they wanted to be and what they wanted from life. And so a lot of people that I met in New York were kind of now scattered around the US. And so we made this kind of itinerary to meet up with some people, either like where they had moved to, or kind of like where their sort of like, sort of transitory kind of year had taken them. Yeah, so it did sort of start out as this like, oh, let's just do this intimate thing together that's kind of about the isolation, and it actually kind of flipped on its head and became more about like, let's go see people and kind of see what it feels like to like go into their house again and be a guest in someone's house, which was it's a thing that I love, to be with people, and to, it feels kind of, it's almost crazy to talk about it now, but it felt in that time, so it felt so off limits that even kind of considering it again was so, so wild. So that was kind of it, wanting to like document that like togetherness.
So it almost seems as though, stranger to the feeling. It seems like it's very kind of in line with everything you just talked about, right? The feeling could be that connection, that awkwardness of actually being in somebody's house that we had all kind of lost touch with. So, that's a really great premise. So when you go out into that adventure, you went to really extraordinary places, whether it was, somewhere in Wisconsin, or whether you're, crossing the mountains at Bighorn, or, you're at the Joshua Tree Desert. Was part of this journey begun because you were looking to reconnect with people, and then kind of on a secondary basis all of those amazing landscapes added to the experience. What do you think it was more about, or did that flip for you at some point? Was it the experience of people? Was it the dramatic nature of the scenery, or both?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those things are so intertwined. Additionally, like on top of kind of what was going on in that year, I had never actually driven across the US. I'd driven across Canada so many times, and I had done quite a bit of touring in the US, but it was always sort of these regional chunks. And I just, I kind of had this nagging feeling like I just wanted to get in the car, see the Atlantic Ocean, and then just drive and drive and drive and drive until I saw the Pacific. And I just hadn't done it yet. And this felt like the time to do it. It's astonishing. I mean, as anyone who's driven across the country knows, it's this incredible altered state because, it's the human brain. I don't know. I like to think about kind of this tool and how it's like, it was honed over millions of years, basically to function perfectly in a hunter-gatherer sort of village kind of situation. And then over the past, especially several hundred years, like we've thrown so many weird situations at it that were that are very trippy. Like just to go that fast and to cover that much distance is like, it's not what the hardware is designed for. So it's such I think it's a crazy way to experience just life on Earth, to kind of be zooming through a landscape and to kind of, you almost get to have this sense that you're experiencing space and time in this kind of different way, where it's like, because you're kind of going across these different landscapes, you almost feel like not only is it taking you these days to drive across the country, but you're almost experiencing the geological time scale of just the way that these things even formed. Yeah. So to have those kind of like some of those drives were just like, I was in tears because it's just like so cinematic to kind of go from these like flat lands and then it rises into mountains. And then like suddenly the rocks are red now. And they kind of look like it's like these Flintstone scenes. And then at the end of the day, getting to someone's house and just getting into their living room and having tea and just like sitting close together and singing a song in harmony. So it's sort of taking the sort of the wild kind of big cinematic beauty and kind of bringing it to this like small intimate expression.
It's funny you mentioned a landscape could bring you to tears. A very quick story: when I drove my daughter from Pennsylvania to Oregon, we, like you, crossed Bighorn, and I'm in the U-Haul in front of her, she's in her car behind me. And as I look in the rearview mirror, I see she's flashing her lights. She wants me to pull over. And when we pull over, we both get out of the car, and literally she's crying. And I said, "Is everything okay? Are you all right?" And she said, "Dad, look how beautiful this is." And I thought, wow, how amazing to stop and be present for just a moment to create that kind of emotion, which kind of leads me, to the next question that I would have for you is, when you're out on the road like you were, and you have that sort of emotion and that sort of inspiration, is there something that created for you that made recording in a living room or a backyard different than what you might have been able to find or do in a studio?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it was kind of, it's almost like the entire concept was kind of an exercise in sort of like doing things the hard way on purpose, in order or sort of taking something that we knew how to do, but just doing it a different way that was like less convenient for the sake of the way that it feels to do it. As a touring musician, again, like I've gotten in cars and gone on, driven 5 to 18 hours a day, lots of times, but there was something different about doing that, but then not playing a show at the end of the night. It made the whole day feel so different, even though we had work to do, which was to we had microphone stands that we brought in out of the car and set them up in these like Airbnbs or people's houses, or we brought a little battery pack to, do it outside, and to recontextualize this thing that you kind of think of as doing it in a studio did give it this kind of like ceremonial feel. Like it felt precious in a different way. And I mean, I love recording in a studio too, and I love touring. But I think anything that you kind of get a feel for and you get into a routine with, it's you get different things happen when you sort of tweak little parts of it.
I'm not a touring musician, but I often thought if I was, when you're touring and you're going from town to town or city to city, you're really kind of going from point A to point B. What you're describing is a little bit more of a road trip where you had the opportunity to kind of stop and smell the roses, literally, maybe even literally. Now, if we could, speaking of, the tour that you took to record this album, let's hear at least one of the songs to start. This is Beauty Sleep.
Nights I lie in bed and I wonder if I'm on my way to another breakdown. Why am I awake now? Sirens screaming down the parkway and fireworks go off, for heaven's sake now. They keep me awake now. And I need my beauty sleep 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week, or I am gonna die. Everybody die. But I don't wanna be so tired while I'm alive. Oh no.
All right, so that was Beauty Sleep from Stranger to the Feeling. And as I was listening to that and as we were talking prior to hearing that song, I wonder, when you were on the road, was there a place in particular that provided you with like a surprising artistic moment, something that really inspired you because of the place you were at or maybe the people you were with?
Yeah, let me think. I mean, the first track's called Strong Hands. That's kind of one of my favorites. That was kind of born out of like, we went into a park in Brooklyn. We went into Prospect Park to kind of kick it off and, invited a bunch of people to come sing. And what I was sort of trying to recreate was these kind of situations that I've been in every so often where like people are like, oh, we're like, having a little picnic in the park, come through. And it just like, when you get a bunch of musicians together, there's like a decent chance that it turns into a sing-along, but it's like very casual and it's not like, so you'll have these beautiful moments that you're just like, oh my gosh, that's just like, I'll just have to remember that. And I was, thinking to myself like, well, let's do something like that, but get a record of it. Because I knew I wanted to capture that feeling, I kind of had to take one of my simpler songs. So like Strong Hands is 3 chords and the chord progression doesn't change the entire time. And the chorus is just like super easy to pick up. And I think there's something amazing that happens when because all the singers that came by and who happened to be there for that recording session, like so many of my favorite singers. And I think there's something really fun that happens when you take some of the most technically gifted musicians and give them extremely easy music to play because you're sort of, I think like you're kind of in a way you like underuse them, and I think it just, there's like, you get to kind of see like, not just like the chops that they've worked on over the years or like their sort of like more sort of flashy, impressive abilities, but you get to sort of showcase that all along the way of kind of developing like a really diverse skill set to play a lot of different kinds of music, that when it's time to do sort of kind of a campfire picnic sing-along thing, there's this just amazing kind of emotion. And I think somehow just that group of singers and musicians kind of came together to, like, I'm sure we could have come up with a complicated arrangement in an hour, but instead we came up with a simple arrangement in like 2 minutes. And that's basically, and we were like, okay, let's record that. And that's just what that is. And so it was like specific to the situation and to the place and the time and the people and yeah.
You know what? When I look through the album, it seems, I think almost every song you're accompanied by, another artist, and there's some really extraordinary artists, whether it's Monica Martin or Jacob Sharp or Rachel Price, right? There's so many that are absolutely incredible. And for somebody like me, I would want to thank you because it gives me an opportunity to dig deep into artists I might not have heard of, but only to discover that there's a level of brilliance there. But did you, as you were just talking even about, that first recording, in Brooklyn. Was there a point where you felt as though something really special is going on, where this is almost as much about community and people as it is about music?
Yeah, I feel really happy that Strong Hands is kind of like, as the opener, it's kind of the thesis, because almost all the rest of the tracks on the album, we ended up doing some overdubs, which was not necessarily the idea going in. I kind of thought like, oh, let's just record what we get and put that out. And I, sort of loosened a little bit on the kind of rigid nature of that concept. But with the first track, Strong Hands, I felt like there was nothing that needed to be added. It was very rich, because we had all those people. And naturally, like, I live in Brooklyn. So in Brooklyn, it was easy to get like 7 or 8 people to come and sing. It's so rewarding. What I like to do, and what I feel like I've kind of spent most of my life trying to hone my skill of, is writing songs. And so it feels kind of like a natural sort of structure for me to hang kind of a community. In a way, I almost think of it less about like, oh, here's my album about community, and kind of saying like, hey, everyone, community is important, and more just like, this is kind of a little snapshot of a trip, and like a journey is made rich kind of by the people that you see along the way. So I agree with you that that's kind of how it sort of comes together, and I think that's the feeling I get when I listen to it now as well. But I think putting it together was almost like more like putting a scrapbook, and you're like, oh, like, we should get a picture, and instead of the picture, it's like, we should record one of my songs.
It is like a great documentary of your road trip. But since we've been speaking of it, let's go into it. This is Strong Hands, which features your wife, Rachel Price, and it was recorded
and a lot of other great singers too.
Yeah, a lot of great singers, but it was recorded in Brooklyn's Prospect Park. This is Strong Hands.
Start at the small of my back, between my shoulder blades, up to the nape of my neck. I had a hard day, yeah, and I'm feeling it melt away just like that. Underneath your strong hands, underneath your strong hands, underneath your strong hands, underneath your strong hands.
So one of the things that strikes me about this album, obviously we talked a lot about the places where it was recorded, forests, parks, backyards. It feels very much like where you're going to be playing at the end of the summer in Hawley, Pennsylvania, a place called Harmony in the Woods, where audiences, are out there amongst the trees. It's a really beautiful place. It's about nature. It's about community, a lot like the album that we've been spending a lot of time talking about. So when somebody goes to see you live, let's talk about your performance now. Talk to me about when they go to see Taylor Ashton. What is somebody going to leave? What's the takeaway from a night with Taylor Ashton?
Yeah, well, at that show and sort of like whenever I can, I will put together a small band. So it'll be me and a bass player and a drummer who both sing. So there's a lot of vocal harmonies. And, over the years, I've realized that I like to talk about the songs. So there's a lot of storytelling as well. I've had people come up to me after the shows and say things like, we love the songs, but like the banter was the best. And there's part of me that's like, well, I work way harder on the songs, but I'll take it. And they'll say things like, you should be a stand-up comedian or whatever. And that idea is terrifying to me.
Which is exactly why you should do it, probably.
Well, but the thing is, like, my life hack is that I get a chance, like, I don't need to do a tight 5 or a tight 10. I can do a tight, like, 1 minute before a song. And, so I only have to keep people laughing for that amount of time, and then we can play you a nice song as well. So I think there's, a nice balance of humor and storytelling and, songs that are, maybe more upbeat and celebratory with things that are maybe sadder, more kind of introspective, in a sort of subtle, not super heavy-handed way, but I do like to kind of look at the set list and think about it like it should kind of almost have the, I don't want to just kind of stand there and play songs for you. I want there to be kind of a emotional arc, some sort of journey from the beginning to the end of the show. Yeah, so that's what I'm going for, and hopefully that comes across.
You had talked about, you referenced banter, and just referencing back, there's a song on the album called "More Than You Will Ever Know," right? And somehow, maybe like 5 or 10 seconds after the actual song and the music ends, someone said that felt really good, and you decided, well, we're going to keep that in there, right? So it's just as soon as the song ends, I don't know if it's the producer or you that says it, but as I heard it, I thought, that really resonates, because it probably says a lot, and if we could, as we end here, and this half hour went so fast, why did you keep that in there? What does that mean? Because it must have bigger meaning than just words. That felt really good. What does that say?
Well, I think in that particular moment, that was a special day, because we had got to Santa Fe and we didn't have any friends in Santa Fe that we knew of. And Jacob had, there was like a motel that he wanted us to, like this cool hotel with a courtyard that was this beautiful spot that he wanted to stay at. And we were just like, well, I guess we'll probably just have to do something that's just me, or like just me and Jacob somewhere. And then he looked across the bar and he saw someone that he had done a recording session with like 10 years previous, this woman, Judy Butterfield. It was this kind of like crazy moment of like, it was kind of the one hole in the itinerary where we hadn't sort of like set something up with someone that I already had like a previous musical relationship with. He went over to her and he was like, "Do you remember me? We worked on this thing." And she said, "Oh my gosh, yes. What are you doing here?" And like, we kind of described the project, and it just was like, it was, without just even needing to discuss it, I think we were just like, well, let's do something. I hadn't heard her sing. I knew Jacob was like, "Oh, she's a great singer." And so she was just like, "Well, I guess like, do you want to come over tomorrow at like 11?" And we were like, "Yes." And so it was this kind of total unknown where we were kind of like, well, let's just see. And, that song is one that like, I picked it that night. I was like, let's do this one with Judy, almost because it has like the most, like the feeling of that song is about this, like about a love for, that is like, comes from years and years of knowing. And so it felt kind of like a little bit of a cheeky move to sing that song with someone that like I literally had only met the day before. I think I wanted to keep that in partially because it's like, for me, it's a little bit of a, like when I set up it was like, oh, we're going to do the song with Monica Martin. We're going to do this song with Jacob, and we're going to do this song with Courtney and Eau Claire. Like, I was like, I have a pretty good idea that those are going to feel pretty good because I know those people. I've made music with them before, but then with Judy, like I didn't even know she existed the day before. And so they're like, wow, that felt good. It encapsulated that day of, well, here we are in this moment I could never have imagined 24 hours ago. And it was, we were just like, it just felt so good to sing with Judy, and we just locked in so easily. And it just it felt, I don't know, it just felt really magical. And I think it sounds good too, but I wanted to kind of capture that, like, I wanted to let people know that, like, however it sounds, hopefully you like the music, but I just want you to know that it felt nice. It felt good to make the music too. And so it's a little bit of a statement about the whole album too, because there was a lot of like pleasant surprises of like kind of going into it with like a pretty sketchy plan. We were kind of like, let's go to this town and sort of like meet up with this person and like sort of see what happens, and things kind of falling into place. And I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was
That's
Yeah.
great. You say it kind of encapsulates it. My version of that line is that it encapsulates the whole album. And I hate to say it, but we've run out of time. And Taylor, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. And one of the
My
things I
pleasure.
would say as we close, for anybody that gets to Harmony in the Woods for your concert in August, I have a feeling that they're all going to leave saying that felt really good. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So thanks for being with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right on. Yeah, thanks so much. Good to talk to you.
All right, thank you. Taylor Ashton performs live at Harmony in the Woods in Hawley on Friday, August 7 at 6 p.m. Harmony in the Woods opens its 6th season this summer with 23 concerts spanning roots rock, jazz, bluegrass, folk, Americana, and global music, all presented in a spectacular outdoor amphitheater setting. Opening weekend begins July 3 with Bywater Call and continues July 4 with Mamma Mania, with an exciting lineup of artists throughout the summer. For tickets and the complete season schedule, visit harmonyinthewoods.org. Taylor, thanks so much for joining us today. You can connect and learn more about Taylor by checking out his website at taylorashton.com. Until next time, I'm Greg Frigoletto. Keep dreaming, keep doing, and own your next chapter.